Chief, thank you. It is my firm's pleasure to be the sponsor of this event. We're thrilled to be included in this, and it is an honor for us to be a part of this wonderful organization. You know, I was talking to Bruce before things started, and I am a graduate of the CLC, unfortunately, in that I'm too old to participate anymore. But I remember when these events took place on Shoney's on Kingston Pike, and we had about 7 people there, and we included the waitresses in our attendance count. And so to see this group before me really warms my heart. It's wonderful how much progress has been achieved. Well, let's get right to it. You have before you today some of the leaders of the finest construction companies in our area. They represent over 160 years of construction experience and are on an annual basis $1 billion in revenue. To your right, your left, my right, sits Andy Lorenz. He is Regional Vice President of Messer Construction. He received a BS from the University of Cincinnati in construction and an MBA from Xavier University. His wife consists of wife Mary and 13-year-old daughter Lauren, and his hobbies include outdoor activities, boating, and exercise. To his right sits Don Freeman, the current president and CEO of Rittenbach Construction. He holds a BS in civil engineering from Tennessee Tech and MS in business administration from the University of Tennessee. His current extracurricular activities include serving on the committee, being a member with the State of Tennessee Quality in Construction Effort, the AGC, and Knoxville Chamber. He is married to Suzanne for 40-plus years, his 2 children, Mark and Jennifer, and he enjoys grandchildren numbering 6 and golf. To his right, Mr. Bruce Bossy, current president of Merit Construction. He received a BS in building construction from Purdue University. His current activities include serving on the Knox County Board of Construction Standards and Appeals, Sacred Heart, Parish Finance Board, Harrison Keep Architectural Review Board, and the Purdue Alumni Club of East Tennessee, where he is the current member and past president. He is married to Sharon for almost 31 years and has children Andrew and Alex. Hobbies include hiking, skiing, traveling, and hanging out with family and friends at the lake. Next to him, Mr. David Duggar. He is currently CEO of Schaffner Kalthoff Mechanical Electrical Service. He serves on the board for the Associated General Contractors in the past, East Tennessee State University Construction Advisory Board, and local and state boards of the PHCC, and was the recent national president of the PHCC. He is past chairman of the Board of Directors for the Episcopal School of Knoxville and serves on the Concord United Methodist Building Committee. David is married to Janet since 1989 and has 4 children, Scott, Michael, Ashley, and Zachary. Last but certainly not least sits Doug Kennedy, the CEO of Johnson & Gallion. He received a Bachelor of Science degree from Architecture from UT in 1978. He serves on the Emerald Youth Foundation Board, where he is chairman of that board. Knoxville Area Chamber of Commerce, Alcoa Community Foundation, UT Graduate School of Medicine Board of Visitors. The 2011 United Way Campaign Cabinet. He is a graduate of the Leadership Knoxville class of 2003. His wife, Vicki, they have 3 children, Justin, Kristen, and Ryan. Please join me in welcoming this distinguished panel. The format today is going to be very relaxed and informal. What I'll do is ask a question and ask the panel to respond. Initially, we'll just go down the line here with each panel member answering the same question, but as we go forward, I may ask specific questions to specific panel members. But to get things started, I'd like each of the panel members in turn to describe how they got started in the construction industry.
I'll start. It's easy. My dad was a carpenter and made it into management as I was growing up, so I would spend I would spend my Saturday mornings at work with Dad shoveling piles of dirt from one side of the site to the other. So that's where I literally got my start.
Mine was not quite that straightforward, Andy. I was, after getting my undergraduate degree, I worked for a company, Monsanto, for a couple of years and decided that I wanted to get my MBA. And my wife and I, recently married, moved to Knoxville, enrolled, and we survived off savings and the job that she had for about 9 months. And then I realized if I was going to continue in school, I had to seek employment. One of the friends of mine that was in the MBA program with me at UT had started working part-time as the runner for a company called, at that time known as Rentenbach Engineering Company. And he said, they'd probably hire you, civil engineering graduate. So I stopped by there, and sure enough, they hired me. I was getting an MBA in finance, and frankly had no intention of going into the construction business. I was heading into banking or something else, trying to utilize my engineering degree. But 42 and a half years later, I'm still here. So it kind of caught on, and I stayed.
My background's probably similar more to Andy's. My father was a trade electrician, and so my Saturday mornings as a youngster were wiring houses and doing those kind of things to help support our family. By the time I was in high school, I worked for my dad after work on Saturday mornings, and by the time I graduated from high school, I swore I'd never get in this crazy business. Entered Purdue as an engineering student in industrial engineering. And by the middle of my sophomore year, I was really tired of statistics and those kind of classes that went with IE. So I talked to a good buddy of mine who was in the building construction program at Purdue, and he said, you need to go see Dr. Dorsey Moss about the exciting things that they have to offer in the building construction program. So that's how I got my start in business.
Thank you, Bruce. I really started, I guess, in the construction business when I was in high school. I wanted to get into heating and air conditioning because it was a lucrative field. I thought it would be something stable. So I set my eyes on that out of high school. Of course, like a lot of young people at the time, I had some growing up to do. So I decided to visit Uncle Sam for a few years to sharpen my skills. After I got out of the service, I went to school at night, got into construction. So here I am today, so 42 years later.
A little more like Don, I had really not much intentions of going into the construction business. From the time I was in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, would sit around and draw buildings and envision myself always from the 8th grade on as being an architect. It probably took about 4 design labs in my 4th year of architecture and the early part of my 5th year of architecture to realize I don't want any part of this. I'm really good at designing buildings. I just thought I could do that. And 1978, when I graduated, also was a pretty tough time in the business, not like we've been through the last few years, but when I started looking at prospects and seeing some of the guys who graduated the year before me and what they were doing, I decided there was possibly another route, and I had really started enjoying construction. The first job I interviewed for was with a development company, and I actually spent 23 years of my career in the development business. So I've kind of dabbled with architecture, a little bit in the development business, but found my true love about 13 years ago and actually in construction.
We won't make you pass the mic down. We'll stay on that end. You know, I've heard it said that true learning only takes place in the context of failure, that success merely confirms superstition. Describe for me your most significant professional failure and what you learned from it.
Talking about architecture school, I do believe architecture and engineering and the building programs that they have out now are all great foundations for being in the construction business. There's, I think, things you pick up from each of those kind of degrees. Some of our best people didn't go to college and any kind of formal education at all, and they're great at what they do. So you can come from a wide variety. I think if I had anything to do over, I would have made the move over into actually a construction company a few years before I did. But each of those things I talked about, architecture school, the development business, I think all helped equip me really to be in the construction industry. So I don't have any regrets about any of those, but wish I had made the move years earlier.
I guess one of my failures that when I was in the service, I thought I wanted to become a dentist. So when I got out of maybe by not deciding to become a dentist, but no, I guess in business, and I learned a lot of trials and tribulations. There's a lot of checks and balances, and I've learned that you need to, I guess, trust people, but you need to have checks and balances in order to succeed in business. I guess I failed at that by not following through, and I've learned a lesson, several lessons really, to be a fact, but I guess not following through. Checks and balances are put in place for a reason. You have to follow them.
I can't imagine you being a dentist.
Can't imagine being a patient.
Oh, I wish you were.
More to come on that. I think probably one of my biggest professional disappointments is when we bring someone on our company and they invest a lot of time in our company, and we invest a lot of time in them, and then whatever, a variety of reasons, it just doesn't work out. And so I think that's just a continual learning process. You learn how to help people succeed, and you hope that when you make those hires, not only the investment in their time, but the investment in the company's time works out.
You know, the construction business is a high risk, comparative low return business. And I think one of the things that we have to be very careful of is when you take a look at a project, we always seem like, particularly in the economy we've seen for the last few years, you always need work. But you've got to be very careful that you don't take the wrong work. And I know those of you that have been in it as long as I have, you've gotten many times where you feel like you need this project. You just got to have this project. And about 2 years later, you realize how much better off you had been if you had bypassed on that project. And I wish that I could say that I made that mistake once. Unfortunately, it could be a repeating mistake. I used to say that we are the largest single contributor to Mississippi State University, which I have no interest in, but building one of their football stadium additions 25 years ago, we made a big contribution to that college. So sometimes you just have to follow your gut and say, this just doesn't make sense, and I'm better off backing off, even though I need to work. No work is a lot of times better than bad work.
I think that professionally, we can replace nearly anything that we do during the day except two things. One is that we can never get the time back, so we have to use our time wisely and most efficiently and effectively, and we have to depend on our people to do the same thing. If we miss an opportunity to grow, we've lost an opportunity to make ourselves better in our company. The other thing that we can't take back is someone's health, their condition. And I see it as a failure if someone gets hurt on our projects. They will never be the same, whether we like it or not. And we need to continue to do our best and act as one in the industry to make sure that we are consistent in our approach to safety.
We'll maintain this pattern for the time being, but I'd like each of you to talk a little bit about and describe your individual management style.
I'll let Don go.
That's fine.
How I think about my management style may be different than how it's actually delivered, but tend to be cautious and to try to get informed decision-making made rather than jumping at something and quickly getting it off my plate. So I tend to listen. I tend to analyze maybe a little bit more than I should, and I probably make decisions a little bit slower than I could. So that is my tendencies as a manager.
I think there's a blend that managers need to develop between control and innovation. As some of you may know, we just recently merged with a larger firm, January 1. And we've done a series of, we've taken tests, we've tried to analyze our management style, we've tried to analyze how our people react to that. And it seems that everyone wants to move more toward freedom and innovation and less toward control. And I think I personally may have been a little more on the control side, and I don't know, we've got a few back there that can say yes or no. But the key is to try and to get people who will be willing to take a little risk and can be innovative under control. And so that's trying to find that balance is what I seek to do. And unfortunately, I think I fall more on the control side than the innovation side.
I guess the phrase that probably best describes my personal management style is to hire good people and get out of their way. We operate with a fair amount of independence. We try not to micromanage our people, but that being said, we do hold them accountable and try and step in as quickly as possible whenever issues arise.
I guess you could say I'm more of a hands-on manager. I like to be involved. I don't micromanage, but I would say probably more democratic than anything.
I like democratic, that's good. You know, everybody down through this table is really, I think, talked about some very good things for managing people. And honestly, hiring the right people, controlling situations, being democratic with them, coaching them, all those different things I think are important. To me, it all comes down to the individual that you're working with. Some people need servant leadership, some people need grace and truth, just using buzz terms of things and management styles are out there. Some people need coaching, but I think you've got to know your people, and I try to know the people that work for us, know what makes them tick, what makes them the best they can be, and then try to work with them individually. As you know, our company's the size where you can still do that. When you get to the size of some of these other companies, that's not as easy to do. But you better have people under you if you're going to continue to manage people that can get to know your people and help them. So I think it's tailored to the individual.
I'll pick on Don for the next question. What is the biggest obstacle to overcome in dealing with suppliers, be it billing, service, or quality? And how do you teach your project managers how best to deal with those challenges?
Well, for a general contractor construction manager, suppliers and subcontractors are the lifeblood of what we do. So it's a matter of knowing the capabilities. When I say capabilities, I'm talking about the technical capabilities, the staffing, personnel capabilities, and the financial capabilities of the firms that you're dealing with. And understanding that when you either issue purchase orders or issue subcontracts. And then working within those capabilities to help them be successful. And for us to be successful, the subcontractors and suppliers have to be successful. And as I think one of you mentioned, accountability, they've got to be accountable for what they have signed up to do. But in our company, our intent is to treat people fairly and to see that they get paid on time, and at the same time try to make sure that they performed the level of what they've signed up to do in the subcontract and or purchase order. So that's kind of the directive to our project managers. Be fair, but make sure that they perform up to the level to which they've agreed.
Bruce, what do you look for in future leaders of your company?
Several years ago, when I was at it was actually a Nucleus Knoxville meeting, Jim Haslam spoke, this is older Jim, spoke to our group, and he said something I guess I'll never forget. He said, learn, earn, return. And it's always stuck with me, those three words have, because I think there's a lot of truth to that. And what he meant by that was to be a leader, not only in your business, but in the community. You have to learn about your trade, and then once you're successful, you have to give back. So I think we look for that in all of our project managers and the leaders of our company. That to say, we also look for obviously a good work ethic. We're not an 8-to-5 business, and it takes hard work to be successful in the business. It takes sacrifice, and I think you have to understand that going into this business, that there's going to be sacrifices that you're going to have to make with your family and your personal life to be successful in the business.
How about in no particular order, but maybe hearing from all the panel members, what are the three most important things you did to start or grow your business?
Robert, first of all, I'm glad you didn't ask me a question before. I misread that. I thought it said general contractor. No, build relationships. This is a relationship business. I started out building relationships. Stand behind what you do. Be honest. Stand behind your work. And vision. Never be complacent.
Sure.
My situation's a little different. 13 years ago, I came to work for a company that was already well established, 87 years old at the time. So one of the main things I had to do, not to grow the company, but just to sustain it, was make sure that, first of all, the culture of the company didn't change. The company was, again, well established and had a great following of good relationships. So anytime there's a new person comes in, if you've got things that are good, you want to make sure they don't change. And that was the primary thing. David mentioned relationships. Jim Bush, who this past month has been with Johnson & Gallion for 50 years, said when I came in, he said, Doug, all my old friends, all the old dogs that I've worked with in my career have all retired now. I don't know these people anymore that are coming in that are running the companies. You got to get out there and build relationships with them. So to David's point, I think that's critical. And again, no business I don't think can grow in today's market without those kind of relationships. And then the third area is do what you say you're going to do. I think that's the simplest thing maybe of all, is just if you're going to make a commitment, live up to it.
Question?
Yeah.
Gosh, those are all great points. I think you have to have a great staff. You got to surround yourself with really, really good people. To add to what David said, my situation was a little bit different, maybe a little bit more similar to Doug's, in that I started at Merritt, but I'd only been out of school 3 years, so I had very, very little experience. And one of the things I had to do was to develop a firm understanding of the business and know how construction worked. I think the other thing that we learned is you have to stay within your means, both financially and work within the resources that you have. To Don's point, sometimes it's the best job you didn't get is probably is the best job ever. So you have to stay within your means.
Well, I would agree with everything that's been said. Obviously, in any business, the key to success is the people. So the people that you surround yourself with, and the capabilities and the integrity and the work ethic of those people is probably the primary building block for any company. And then I think adding on to that, you need to you need to kind of look to the future in every project. Don't make your decisions based upon simply that one project. Think about the future, think about the relationships with the client and decisions that you make, the long-term decisions and long-term impacts those decisions are going to have. And base that on your decisions, not on one particular instance that may be emotionally driving the decision you might make on any particular day. Look forward.
Without a doubt, the three most important things that I look, that we did to drive our business here was to build relationships and build more and build more. When we started 10 years ago, our group literally didn't know anyone. And we slowly but surely began to get some relationships started, and that is really the name of the game. Construction is a people business, and we are communicating all the time with the folks around us. The thing I find most gratifying are the relationships. They're very hard to win, and they're easy to lose. And we need to respect those, and without a doubt, it is those relationships that will make you successful.
Andy, we'll stay with you.
Okay.
Pardon me. You were all here because you were successful. If folks want to duplicate that success, what quality of yours specifically should they copy?
I think that we've kind of mentioned it, and other folks have mentioned it today, but the ability to understand where the risk is and to focus most of your attention on of the 90 things you have to do, 10 of them are probably the highest risk items, and you need to be able to identify what they are and to deal with them, most likely because they're not going to go away. The problems will eventually resurrect themselves, and we need to resolve them fully.
I think whether you're the leader of a company or you're a young project manager, estimator, or whatever that someday wants to be a leader of the company, I think you want to set an example. And you want to set an example at least in a couple of ways. One, in your work ethic, that you can be looked up to, that you are carrying your load and whatever load that is. And then I think the other thing that is equally important is that you don't do anything where people within the company and clients and suppliers and subcontractors and everybody you're dealing with questions your integrity. You can't recover that integrity. So make sure that that's always paramount in all that you do.
Both very good points. I'll go back maybe to the conservatism. Again, I think that we all have to operate our companies within our means, both from a resource standpoint, the people that you have, and also your financial capability. So I would say operate conservatively in addition to what Andy and Don said.
All very good points. As far as my quality, I don't know that I've got one. And I would say sincerity and work ethic. That's very important to me.
I was expecting David to talk longer. I'm not prepared. I think one thing for me, all these are good things, and there's so many things that are important to being successful. What little bit of success that I think I've had over the years honestly comes from one thing. And I think if I ask the people that we look to hire what we look for in them as a quality, that I can tell that they genuinely care about the people that they work for and work with, and that they're going to make each of those people a success. So just a genuine effort to make everyone you deal with, whether it's the client, the architects, the subcontractors, vendors, the people that are just out there as laborers on the field. If you don't want to make each one of them a success, then you're probably not going to wind up working at our company. That's that.
David, I'm going to ask you this question, but the panel can respond to the extent they wish to. As a whole, this business is of course cyclical. In the post-Great Recession era, what can be done to soften the blow of the next downturn?
Oh, wow. Replace Congress? Seriously? Not obvious. But, no, diversification means a lot. We're diversified in our business, so, you know, a lot of companies during the downturn have looked for ways to expand their business or to really keep their people working, but diversification and trading.
How about anybody else?
I didn't mean to make you mad. 7 years ago, 8 years ago, when the economy, there were all those rumors out there that things were about to maybe get bad. Honestly, our management team, we sat down and said, what do we do about this? And we decided that we would be very proactive. We came up with what we called scenario planning. We had scenarios that if these things happen, here's the steps we would take, and I won't bore you with all that, but we had 4 or 5 levels of scenario planning. We actually implemented the first 2 levels of that. What that did was teach us a whole lot about what are the things that are important to running our business, what are the things that we have to do, what are the things that are nice to do, what are the things that we could get by without doing them. And we've never forgotten that. So the next time, I hope it doesn't happen in my few years of my career that's left, but if there is another downturn, we're going to be prepared just like we were 7 years ago.
This is kind of a little bit different point, I guess, but I think probably looking at the licensing laws in not only our state, but all the states. You know, we're in a tough business, we're in a risky business, and I think when you enter the business, which one of the first things you have to do is get your construction license, is that you really need to have a good understanding of things like cash management and just the business aspects of running a construction business. It maybe even make it a little bit tougher to get in the business, not extremely tough because that's a good old American way, but making sure folks know what capital requirements are so that you set them up to succeed and not to fail.
I've been around this business long enough that I've seen multiple downturns and swings in the economy. I can remember in 1982 or 1983, those of us who were around here in the World's Fair, that was a great time for Knoxville, those of us that were involved in the construction community. But in early 83, when 2 of the major banks went down, and everybody that was going to build anything before the World's Fair had already built it, and there was not a lot to do, and we were sitting here with all this overhead and saying, now what are we going to do with these people? And we expanded geographically, some of which was successful and some of which was painfully not successful. And that is one of the things, echoing what David said, you've got to be diversified and flexible in what you're doing, but sometimes in a downturn, you always start off in new directions when the economy turns down, just like you do when the economy brings on new opportunities. But you really need to think those through, because some of those can be more painful than the downturn, and there's sometimes it's better off just kind of hunker down and be a little bit more frugal and work your way through it, rather than making decisions that can add to the pain that already exists in the marketplace.
I think that we need, as we went into this flip, we have learned over the last several years that investing in our future was certainly the way we were going to continue to grow our business even in difficult times. And I think that is the lesson that we learned, that although we did become more frugal and we hunkered down a bit, we did not reduce our level of investment in new technology, in ways to become more efficient and effective as a company. And I think that we will continue to do that. It has, in fact, that investment into the future in tough times has really done us well.
Let's stick with this pattern and go back in the other direction. Andy, you mentioned technology. What new technologies will the construction industry utilize to stay competitive? Specifically, what role do you see social media playing in this industry?
We are heavily involved in technology, and it is where the industry is going, and it's where it's going to have to go. Quite frankly, the resources that we've depended upon are dwindling, and we need to be much more effective with the resources that we do have. So technology in mastering BIM or BIM to FM, or different ways to contract work that make it more effective and efficient, certainly is the route that I just see the newer folks being and the younger folks being much more adept at creating that innovation. We're in a turning point in my mind that fellows my age and maybe a little bit older are used to a certain level of resource that the younger folks won't have. And I think with some creativity and some real deep thinking and maybe different ways to get some folks involved in our industry that has been different in the past is really where it's going to carry us into the future.
Some of us are a little bit older. Those of you that are early in your careers have a real advantage from the technology standpoint. And you certainly, those of us that are older may have more experience, but you can adapt to the technology that is changing so very quickly. I know we have some of our young business development people that talk about all this social media that we ought to be doing, and it's, I have a hard time grasping it. I have a hard time dealing with it, but it's the way of the future, and our younger people just accept it and participate in it, and it's going to be what happens. In my 40-plus years, it's interesting that we still pour concrete very similar to the way we poured concrete 40 years ago. But I think as the technology does continue, I think our business is going to change at a faster pace in the next 20 years than it has in the last 40 years. I know our manpower resources are probably diminishing, and those who are going to be successful in the construction business are going to have to figure out how to overcome that. The new technologies of the lean construction, the modeling, the prefabrication, the modular approach to construction, there are going to have to be ways that we work smarter instead of simply adding more manpower. So I think those of you who are young need to embrace that and take full advantage of your understanding and utilize it to your best advantage.
I'll maybe focus a little bit more on the social media part of things. I do think it's a great way for people to find out about your company. It's an outstanding resource, and older guys like me need to understand it better and how it works. But I do think it's a great way from a marketing standpoint for people to find out about your company. I think that being said, you have to manage it. Not knowing that much about social media, I went to a Leadership Knoxville seminar I guess it was maybe a year ago, and there was a guy from Ruby Tuesday sitting there, and he said the last thing you want to do if somebody gets a hamburger that's not well done at your restaurant, and then they get on social media, you have to have someone that's there watching it, and you have to be able to control it. So, and it's a good point. So anyways, social media, there's a lot of positives to it, but you do have to manage it properly.
Well, these three gentlemen must have answered or looked at my questions and answers. You know, technology during the downturn, it really hit us in 2010, and that was one thing that we invested in was technology, because the construction industry is evolving into a new dimension, really. So we've invested in a lot of technology and continue investing in technology, and if we're not investing in technology, you're going to be left behind. So it's changing so much daily, and it's just phenomenal what has transpired in the last 5 years. So technology is a big thing. I think it's going to help us become more efficient and more proficient in construction. As Don had mentioned, the labor force in construction is dwindling. So I think technology is going to help that from that standpoint, especially with prefabrication and modular construction, things of that nature.
I got nothing. I moved from the fax machine to email back a few years ago. My life's never been the same since. All these things are really good points. And in all honesty, I think at some point in time, if you are an old dog, you have to realize I'm never going to get there on some of this stuff. So what we've done is we're hiring our next generation. Every person, just kind of going back into some of the other questions, every person we hire, and honestly, we've had a really good stream over the last couple of years of hires. We've hired about 10 new people into our company. And the first thing we do is, one is make sure they're younger than me. Everybody's voted on that, and that was unanimous. The second thing is they've got to understand all this new technology. There's no reason for us to get people today that aren't proficient in the new technology. And honestly, then back to that management style, kind of what Bruce talked about, we're getting out of their way. We're letting them do that. So social media, probably never going to be a big part of my life, but it's a part of our company's life now. We have people managing that. BIM, we're moving more and more into that daily. All these things, prefabrication is a huge thing right now. Every building that we're doing currently, we're looking at some portion of that building being built with prefabricated pieces. So all those things are very important. Again, I think from my standpoint, I've had to recognize I'm not going to be the leader of that effort, and we've got people in that can.
A related topic, what have you found to be the best way to market your company?
Word of mouth. I'm glad I got to go first on that one. Word of mouth is the best way, absolutely, without question. If you don't finish a project and that client wants to recommend you for the next project, there's really not a good marketing program that overcomes that.
Again, Doug was overlooking my shoulder. No, the constant communication, word of mouth, really keep your clients informed of what changes are taking place, what you're doing with your company. Keep them aware of what's going on. So, word of mouth for sure.
Definitely develop or maintaining a good reputation. I totally agree with that. I think also you have to develop your brand. You have to know what you're good at, maybe what you're not good at, and develop your brand and stay with it.
Not a whole lot to add to what they've all said. You're only as good as your last job, as we all know. But when it comes right, all the social media and all this that can get your brand out and can market your company. But it comes down to relationships, and I think that's one of the things I fuss at our people sometimes. You know, pick up the phone and call somebody. Don't send them an email, or emails will go back and forth for weeks, and you think you got something resolved, but you don't. Either go see them or pick up the phone and call them and get it worked out. work it out as soon as you can. So you're still always going to have relationships. That's the best way to sell and conduct business.
Next question.
I'll do that. I'll look it up. All right, this will be the final question, then we'll open it up for question and answer from the floor. All right, everyone get out your crystal ball. Where do you see the industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, we'll be coming, I think, we'll be transitioning to what we will become as an industry. We're going to take all that we know right now and come out of this recession, and I think we'll be better for it. We've learned a lot, and we'll continue to learn, and we'll be better implementers of new technology and understand where the difficulties are in the industry, and we'll come up with a way to fix it.
Wow. I don't think I have a good answer there. My crystal ball has never been all that good. I do think that we will, you never know how long cycles are going to last, and coming out of this last recession, frankly, we haven't come out very quickly. I do think that we will begin to transition, and I hope this happens, we'll begin to transition more into privately funded work and away from the publicly funded work, which is where we have found so much of our work in the past few years. But we'll all be leaner, we'll all have new technology, and I think excuse me, we'll all come out of it as better contractors, and all seize the challenge and be better for it, and we'll adjust. We'll be flexible, and we'll adjust to what that crystal ball does bring down the road. And if we don't adjust, we won't be here. So adjustment and flexibility will be very important.
I think there's probably going to be a continued emphasis on healthcare construction with an aging population. It's going to continue to be a big part of our market, and I think multifamily housing is something else that's going to continue to remain big. I also think renovation projects will continue to stay big in the market in the next 5 to 10 years, looking at what kind of projects will be out there for us at least. I had breakfast with my youngest son Alex at Walmart's drugstore about 8 or 10 years ago, and I said, do you think you'd ever want to get in the construction business? He said, Dad, by the time I get to be your age, all the land will be built on. So to that extent, I do think renovation work is something in the next 5 to 10 years that will be strong in the industry. It will continue to be strong in the industry.
Hopefully more profitable. We've been through a recession. I don't think we're still out of it yet, really, we're on the verge. But it's going to be really tough. But, I think all the companies that are investing in their people, because you're only as good as your people are, we've been investing in our workforce and trying to improve it, training, and so on and so forth. So, the construction industry, as we've talked this morning, has changed dramatically in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, tremendous change. So I think I see a lot more mergers and acquisitions within the industry. As Bruce had mentioned, healthcare, I think construction and healthcare, energy services, things of that nature are going to be really booming. Technology in 5 years, I don't have a clue what it's going to be like, but it's going to evolve, and the construction industry is going to evolve so much around technology that it's going to be scary for me. But invest in your people, because your people are your best resource.
Is this the last question?
It is the last question.
First, I'd like to thank Bruce for being the keeper of the microphone, making sure we didn't turn any glasses over or anything. If you look at this table, I would say it's probably safe that in the next 6, 7 years, at least 3 of us, maybe up here, might not be still working at the companies we're at now. Maybe only 2 of us. If you look around this room, I see several people that probably won't be working in 6, 7 years. The facts are, there are a lot of the companies here in Knoxville, Tennessee, that the owners, the people running those companies are old dogs now. We're going to be transitioning out at least over the next decade. So I think one thing that's going to happen is the construction companies in this town are either going to be acquired, they're going to have to find new owners and new people to manage them. We're trying our best to bring in new people that we think have those kind of talents and to be set up for that next generation. We especially, Don mentioned, the Rickenbach merger with Chrisman. That's brought a lot of conversation to our company. Where do we go eventually? So there's a lot of things to be answered. I think it all, again, revolves around there's going to be a new generation of people out there running a lot of our companies in Knoxville, and we're going to be counting on them to continue to do a good job. I was in a meeting with the TBR one day last week, Tennessee Board of Regents, just talking about potential things that may be growing. If Governor Haslam's community colleges program goes through, the TBR sitting there going, they do not know how they would keep up with what will have to happen at all those community colleges to be able to handle the new groups of people who probably go to college that would not have otherwise. Healthcare, I may have a little different take on it. With the amount of healthcare work we do, I think there'll continue always to be healthcare work, but I don't think there's going to be many new hospitals built, especially around this area. I think that healthcare is going to turn into more ambulatory kind of centers, more medical office buildings, outpatient centers, things like that. I think there'll be good work there. And then other industries, we just hope over the next few years they actually continue to recover as we are beginning to see some of that now.
Excellent. Questions?